In this video, I want to talk about one of my absolute favorite techniques to fish, and it's one that is still a little bit under the radar. I just don't think a lot of guys have confidence in this bait yet, and that is a spy bait. And I'm telling you, if you have not fished a spy bait or a spin bait yet, really now is the time to start fishing this bait, because we're here in July, you know, we're gonna be going into August and September. And although a spy bait can be good year around, sometimes when you have a lot of really tough conditions, this bait will really shine, especially if you have some clear water. So in this video, I'm just gonna kind of do a spy bait breakdown, kind of tell you about the gear that I like to use, how I like to fish this bait, where I like to fish this bait, a little bit all about the spy bait in this one. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. And right now, for the month of July 2024, I am running a special deal on all of my USA made sun shirts. And like I always say, this is literally one of the only USA made sun shirts out there on the market. I know that there's a ton of companies out there that sell them. This is one of the only ones that is USA made, and it's really, I'm really proud of that anyway. So right now, all my sun shirts are 20% off, whether you buy one of them or if you want to buy 10 of them. And actually, if you buy 2 or more, you get free shipping as well. So anyways, I will leave links down below in the description. Shopping at Fin Fishing is truly the best way to help support this channel. All right, let's talk about the spy bait. And I'm gonna be honest, when the spy bait first came out, I ordered some. You know, this is kind of that one of those Japanese techniques that grew in popularity over there. And one of the biggest things that you should always think about is, it always seems like the Japanese and the Japanese culture is a little bit ahead of where we are in the US as far as baits go. And if you watch any of the videos, for example, like, you know, one of the most dominant techniques in bass fishing right now is kind of that hover strolling technique, a hover rig, a jig head minnow. Guys were doing that in Japan a long time ago. They were doing it a little bit different way, but they have been fishing that technique for a long, long time. Same thing with the spy bait. They've been fishing spy baits for big largemouth over there for a number of years. Finally, they brought it over here and guys started fishing it, and this has kind of become known more for smallmouth fishing. But I'm telling you what, this particular bait will catch largemouth, big spotted bass, and of course, big smallmouth. And in this video, I really just want to go through it a little bit more. Now, the big thing with spy baits you really need to understand is how this bait is worked and why it is so attractive to a bass. Now, the big thing with a spy bait is it has a tremendous drawing power. When we talk about drawing power, a lot of times we're referring to bigger baits and baits like a jerk bait. A jerk bait will draw fish in from 10, 15, 20 feet away. I mean, I have used my Mega Live before and I will see fish come 10, 15 feet up to get a jerk bait. The same thing with a big glide bait. Glide baits have tremendous drawing power. I mean, sometimes you can go down a creek that's 20, 30 foot wide, cast that glide bait right in the middle, and it will draw fish from the entire area right to that lure. It has a big drawing power. Now, with that being said, those baits, you know, are a lot bigger than this little thing. This spy bait, especially in clear water, has a humongous drawing power. And I don't really understand it. Like, if I'm being 100% honest with you, you know, if you watch people talk about this bait, and these are more or less people that are like trying to sell the bait, so like the companies themselves, they will tell you how the prop in the front spins one way, the prop in the back spins the other way, and it creates some sort of motion in the water that the bass can use to track. And I don't know if that's true or not, but what I know is that this thing just has a very big drawing power. And the way that you work this bait, it's very simple. 90% of the time I work this bait, I'm casting it out and I'm literally just a slow to medium retrieve all the way back to the boat. And so with that being said, as it's going, this bait just does this little side to side wobble, just like this. And that motion, that side to side wobble, as we have found out with baits like a jig head minnow, that has just such a natural action to the bass that they almost just cannot stand to bite it. Like, they just have to bite it, that little side to side wobble. And so, you know, the thing about a SPYBAIT, the biggest times that I use it are a lot of times when the fishing is just really tough. And like we're experiencing this right now in a lot of lakes. So if you are fishing a clear body of water and it's tough to go out there and catch fish, man, try to pick up a SPYBAIT. And the best thing about this bait is that because of its drawing power, it's almost hard to work it wrong as long as you're not working it too fast. And I've even caught fish on this working this thing really fast. And the reason that I say that is if you're, like I have caught fish on this that have come off the bottom in 25 foot of water, and this bait will only be 6 or 7 foot below the surface. Like they will come that far up to hit this bait. I've also caught fish where you're in 6 and 7 and 8 foot of water and this thing is just above the bottom and you catch a lot of fish. So that's the thing about this bait is it's hard to fish it wrong. It's just all about having confidence to throw it. And again, it's very easy. It literally pick the thing up, cast it out, reel it in slowly. With a lot of different lures out there on the market, you know, whenever I talk about baits like chatterbaits or even crankbaits, like I always talk about implementing action into the bait where I'm gonna kill that bait from time to time. I'm gonna speed it up from time to time. And this is just not one of those baits. Like this is a steady, slow to medium retrieve that I use with this, and it catches a lot of fish, a tremendous amount of fish. Now, something that's very important to understand about a SPYBAIT is that the equipment that you use will make a big difference on the amount of fish that you put in the boat. A SPYBAIT, although it is small, it is a heavy lure. This bait sinks, it's a heavy lure. This particular one I think is 3/8 of an ounce. So you can cast these things an absolute mile, but when you get fish that bite on them and they're jumping out of the water, they can shake these things very, very easily. And it took me a number of years to really dial in a system that works for me. And now I feel like I lose very few fish with the SPYBAIT, where when I first got started, I felt like I lost probably 50 to 60% of the fish that I actually hooked up with. Now, that system, the biggest and most important part of it is the rod that you use. Now, I have found that I typically like to use long rods. This is a 7-foot 6-inch rod right here. And the reason that I like a really long rod is because there are a lot of situations where I am making a bomb cast with this bait. I am making a humongous long cast and just kind of reeling this thing back to me. So that longer rod really allows you to get that bait out there. Now, with that being said, I've done a little bit more of target fishing with a SPYBAIT, and I've used rods that are 6 foot 6 inches in length. So to me, the length of the rod that you use isn't as important as the action. To me, the action is absolutely everything with this bait. And the biggest thing that you want is you want a rod that has a more of a moderate bend to it, even a moderate slow bend to it. And what that means is that this rod is going to bend a lot further throughout the blank. So this particular rod right here, if I were to actually bend it, you will see that it's bending right here. You know, it bends throughout the entire rod very, very well. And that is the most important thing with your SPYBAIT, because that moderate bend, when a fish jumps out there and he's a ways away, because you have so much bend in that rod, it helps to keep that line tight while that fish is thrashing. You know, if you had a rod that was more of a fast action rod and that fish is a ways out there and he jumps, like, because it's a fast action rod, it's a little bit stiffer. If that fish can actually make that bait have more slack, which means it's gonna flip and flop all over the place, which means you're going to lose more fish. So when you buy a rod for this, just remember, more of that moderate action is what you want, no matter the length of the rod. Now, when it comes to the power of the rod, this particular rod is a medium light power. I really like that. I think you can do medium light or medium. I've used a lot of medium rods too, and they work out. I do like the medium light for this, and I will leave a link down below in the description for the equipment that I'm using. Now, let's talk about the line, because that's the next most important thing in my opinion. And you know, when these first came out, a lot of anglers were talking about using this with straight fluorocarbon. And I have done that. I've used straight fluorocarbon, and I've used what I use now, which is braided fluorocarbon. And I have found that braided fluorocarbon just works best for me. You know, it just does. I'm sure that there's guys out there that have used straight fluorocarbon with their spy baits and they really, really like it. If it's working for you, I always say stick with it. If you're a landing fish, if you're hooking up with fish, you're landing fish, that's all that matters. Me, I have found that I really like a braid to fluorocarbon leader. Now, I do like a longer fluorocarbon leader, you know, somewhere around the 12 to 20 foot in length. And that also allows you to be able to retie several times before having to actually retie the whole leader. I know that this particular rod and reel, when I first started, this knot was into the reel and I just had fluorocarbon hanging off of it. So I do like a little bit longer leader, but to me, I will do a number of things with this bait as far as fishing it, but most of the time I fish it, I'm gonna cast this bait out, and I'm just, like I said, I'm just slowly reeling this thing in. And if you make a long cast and you pretty much start reeling this bait as soon as it hits the water, in a long cast, this bait's gonna get down probably 6 to 8 foot, somewhere in that range. So I believe as long as you are fishing less than 20 foot of water, those fish have no problem coming up to get this bait. And if you have lakes, you know, if you live in like the Carolinas, or you have lakes that, you know, where you have like blueback herring, or even up in the north where you have more alewives, like really bait fish oriented bass will come even further to get this bait because they're just so used to it. They're so used to going a distance for this bait. But anyways, the other way that you can fish this bait, and this, you know, I started doing this before forward-facing sonar came out, but it really helps to have forward-facing sonar, and that is what the Japanese call it, tracing the bottom. And so if you're fishing this bait really deep, and you can fish it, you know, 25, 30, 40 foot deep, you will cast this bait out, let it hit the bottom, and basically what you're gonna do is keep this bait about a foot or two off the bottom, even 3 foot off the bottom. You could do it even a little bit more. That's what the Japanese call tracing. And I've caught a lot of fish tracing the bottom before. It's a lot easier with forward-facing sonar. Like, there's no question about that. Now, with that being said, before forward-facing sonar really got popular, I was doing that with this bait. And the big thing that I was doing is casting this bait out, letting it hit the bottom, and I would just slowly reel it. And about every 10 to 20 seconds in my cast, I would just kill the bait, and I would actually drop slack in the line, and I would see how long it took for that bait to actually hit the bottom again. And so then it kind of allowed me to see how, if I needed to slow that bait down, or even if I needed to speed that up. Like if I'm dragging it or fishing it so slow that it's hitting the bottom, then I obviously need to speed it up, even if you're fishing 30, 40 foot of water. But if that bait falls a distance, I think a lot of times it's best to slow it down a little bit to try to keep it, again, tracing the bottom. That is, again, that's a Japanese technique that they use a lot, and I have used a lot, and it catches fish. I'm telling you, when no other lures will catch fish, a spy bait will catch them. Like, especially in the calmest, clearest water, which tend to be very difficult to catch a bass, you can catch them on a spy bait. I'm just telling you, pick up some spy baits. You know, I like a number of different ones on the market. I really like all the Duo Realis the best. You know, the SPYBAIT 80, the SPYBAIT 80 G-Fix, those ones are just staples that I have used a ton. This one here, I can't remember if this is a 65. What is this one? I can't even read it. A 62. This is a great little bait too. And the best thing about it is, like I said, now is the time to fish these baits, because in a lot of our lakes, we have really small minnows and really small shad that are the young of the year, and the bass are feasting on those things. And so if you can pick up a bait like a spy bait that really resembles those minnows and shad, man, you can catch a lot of fish. All right, I think that's a pretty decent breakdown of the spy bait. Hopefully it just gives you some confidence to go out there and fish it. Also, you can fish that bait in a pond. My parents have a lake, a pond in their backyard, and I've caught a lot of fish on a spy bait. It's a clearer pond, but it's a lot of fun. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.